Next on the show, you might recall 4 years ago, the Government of Canada announced an ambitious plan for the rollout of $10 a day day early learning and childcare across the country, pardon me. Now, along with promises to create 250,000 new spaces by next March. So we want to see where they're at with all of this. There was a report released this morning that looks into it. It's entitled Cash Cow. Molly McCracken's director of the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives here in Manitoba, with the Manitoba office rather, and she joins us now. Hi, Molly.
Good morning.
So Cash Cow's quite a title. Tell me about why it's called that, this report.
What's called Cash Cow Assessing Childcare Space Creation Progress. And this $10 a day childcare plan to have a universal childcare system across Canada is ambitious and welcome from the childcare sector and from parents and employers alike. And so the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives has created a database whereby we are tracking the creation of childcare spaces by geographic area and actually all the way down to city block radius to see if parents have a childcare space close to where they live within 5 kilometers. It's called Cash Cow because we found that of the 150,000 new spaces created since 2022 across the country, most of those have been created in the for-profit sector. And that's a concern because research shows that the not-for-profit sector keeps all of the public money that's going into childcare into creating quality childcare, better wages for workers, and those are the expenses of childcare workers and the rent to operate the center. Manitoba is a bit different there, however, because most of the childcare centers here are nonprofit, 95%. So it's a bit of a different story here in Manitoba.
So what does that mean, Molly? If 95% of them are nonprofit here in Manitoba, how does that fit into the picture of how many spaces we still need and how it works into this report, which, as you said, is mostly, the report is tracking the private spaces?
Well, yes, the report's tracking all the spaces in Canada and finds in Canada most of them are for-profit have been
Pardon
created.
me, yeah, I said that
However,
wrong.
the story in Manitoba is different. That we have created here 3,400 spaces since 2022 for infants and preschoolers, and that's far short of the goal of 23,000 spaces that Manitoba said that they would create under the federal provincial agreement for the early learning and childcare system. And that's because we have an application-based system here in Manitoba where if you, to create a new childcare center, you have to apply to the provincial government to do so, and they only cover 60% of the capital costs. The rest have to be fundraised. So, it's a strength here that we have a not-for-profit system. However, it has hampered our expansion because the model of creating these new spaces has been a passive one. And so this report is a call to action to change that approach here in Manitoba.
What does that look like, changing the approach? What's the recommendation? What's the first recommendation that would do that?
Well, we're saying that the provincial government needs to take a leadership role here, just like for schools. The school divisions plan for where the schools will be based on child population. That's not happening at all for childcare here in Manitoba. It's a patchwork kind of popcorn approach. And so what we're saying is the province needs to create a plan to build the remaining spaces that are needed, almost 20,000 new spaces, so that parents have access to this $10 a day childcare. And that can be done with other public entities like First Nations governments, some of which have already been creating childcare, which is great, regional health authorities, school boards, and existing nonprofit spaces, as well as taking a leadership role to create public childcare where it's needed, which is particularly in rural areas or in more low-income neighborhoods.
I was just going to ask you that. What other areas? So, in some of the rural areas, you found were still low. Why does this persist? I mean, you and I have been together on the air and off the air for a long time as community members here in Manitoba. I feel like we've been talking about this for an equal number of years. Not enough spaces, long lists, having to apply for families, years in advance when you don't even aren't even sometimes you're not even pregnant yet and you're thinking about it. And then also what you highlighted, that the needs for people who are in lower income brackets to have their needs met. Why does this continue to persist no matter who's in government? What's happening?
Well, the $10 a day childcare agreement is a game changer. That came into 2021. So prior to that, there was less attention and resources available to the childcare sector. Manitoba has taken a very important step of boosting the wages of early childhood educators by about $5 per hour. And that's important because it'll help to retain those workers and also to attract new workers because you need folks to work in these new centers. But what we're saying is we're coming to the end of this first 5-year agreement for the Canada-wide early learning childcare agreement. We're going to be entering another 5-year phase, and we're asking the province to change its approach from this passive waiting for centers to apply to create new spaces to taking a leadership role with the public sector, to say, how are we going to build these spaces? Where are they needed? Who can step up to build them? And can the province actually take the initiative and build and create some?
So there's been some changes in intention and in funding and in the direction the province is going, is what I'm hearing from you. But now we need to change sort of who actually can drive the bus to get this done, maybe in a more expedient manner.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Molly. Always appreciate your perspective. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
That's Molly McCracken with us live on Zoom on CBC. She's director with the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives in our Manitoba office here.